Welcome, everybody, to the Sunday edition of The Expendable Show. I'm your host, The Expendable. So, if you like my show, like, subscribe, and ding the bell. And this episode is brought to you by Gatsby Trading Solutions. We'd probably trade you a new wife if you need one, or husband. We'll trade stuff. Just kidding, we don't do that. So, let's get into our statistics this week. There's a lot of stuff to cover. So, let's talk about the Doge website hasn't changed, but we are still making progress towards the debt clock. So we're up to $615 billion in savings, which is $5,479. So that's good. I mean, it is what it is. It ain't the same without Elon in there. I hate to say it, but that's a fact. Gas prices in 2024. Why are you doing that? Be changing my microphone all the time. I have to change it back. Gas prices in 2024 is $3.30. Today we're AAA says we're at $3.18 a gallon. I don't know. I feel like eventually Trump's got to really hunker down on the energy prices. Even when in my little investigation into Kentucky, they're talking a lot about energy prices. With their AEP especially, they say that their electric bills are insanely high there. So I think Trump needs to really focus in on that in the next 100 days or so. Everybody could use an energy break, and we're not seeing the gas prices go down like we want them to. And I know there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to oil, but that's what I think. Mortgage rates. 2024, the average was 6.7%. We are at 6.57%. So they went up 2 points or 0.2%. And which doesn't make me happy. You're sitting around here waiting on Jerome Powell to do the right thing still. It's supposed to be this month. We're supposed to see a half point. We'll see. Trump's approval rating. 45.8, so he's back up. He went up 0.6 points. So that's good for him. He must have done something right this week. It made some people happy. So let's go back to the Democrat presidential polling for 2028. Your top candidate, according to the Ohio primary polls, is Gavin Newsom. He's at 20%. Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he's at 15%. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is at 8%. Tampon Tim's at 7%. Kamala Harris, 7%. Bernie Sanders, 7%. Andy Bashir is at 7%. Actually, that's wrong. Andy Bashir is at 4%. Got to fix that. Can't be given the wrong statistics. I don't want anybody thinking Andy Bashir's doing good because he's not. Shapiro, 3%. Cory Booker, 3%. And Chicago's fantastic governor, J.B. Pritzker, is at 3%, tied in last place. So speaking of J.B. Pritzker, let's talk about crime in Chicago. So President Donald Trump is intensifying his feud with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker after another bloody weekend in Chicago, blasting the Democrat for rejecting federal help as 6 people were killed and more than 24 were shot. That was over last weekend. Trump put out a True Social post last Saturday. Or was this Saturday? Yeah, it was yesterday. He said that Pritzker is incompetent and warned the governor to straighten it out fast or we're coming in. Trump's warning Chicago could be the next and pointing out that even Pritzker's recent weight loss looks like a telltale sign of a possible 2028 presidential run. It is weird because Pritzker was pretty large and in charge, but he has lost some weight. Good for him. I don't ever dog on people when they want to, try to get their fit on. So I'm going to actually say good job, J.B. Pritzker. However, you're still a communist, so I still don't like you. But good job on your weight loss. So Trump also mocked Pritzker personally earlier in the week, saying he ought to spend more time in the gym, actually. It must have hurt Pritzker's feelings, so he didn't go to the gym. It looks like he went on the Ozempic plan because he lost a lot of weight really fast, so it's got to be Ozempic. It's the only way to do it. So Trump went on to say 6 people were killed, 24 people were shot in Chicago last weekend, and J.B. Pritzker, the weak and pathetic governor of Illinois, just said that he doesn't need help in preventing crime. The president wrote on Truth Social. He's crazy. He better straighten it out faster. We're coming in. So we'll go through this, and then I'll give you my kind of take on that. So Pritzker is pushing back hard. He called Trump's approach unconstitutional and a dangerous power grab. He also mocked Trump's personal attacks on his physique, quipping that it takes one to know one on the weight loss question. What kind of argument is this? I know you ever would, am I? But that's where we're at. Republican strategist Mark McKinnon told Politico that Pritzker's slimmer look looks like he's getting ready for a fight, while consultant David Kochel noticed weight loss is increasingly part of a political makeover. If you want to look younger and healthier, it makes total sense. Which I don't know if a lot of Democrats know this, that the Pritzker family are super billionaires. So it's not really relevant in anything, but just thought I'd throw that fact out there. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson signed a sweeping executive order Friday rejecting Trump's threat to deploy federal troops or the National Guard. We'll see how well that works. We do not need nor want an unconstitutional and illegal military occupation of our city, Johnson said, vowing that Chicago would do everything in our power to defend our democracy and protect our communities. They got videos of kids falling on stuff. It's funny. It's not funny, but it is. Trump seizes on Chicago as a symbol of Democratic failure and bolsters his law and order brand with executive muscle, while Pritzker gets to portray himself as standing up to a president he calls a bully. So behind the men's political theater, Chicago has led the nation in homicides, total homicides, for 13 straight years in a row. So that's a problem. My suggestion to these Democrat mayors and whatnot is if you don't want Trump to show up with the National Guard, then get your crime under control. If you have to hire more cops, go hire more cops. And I know the problem is you spend all this time for all these last few years telling everybody how bad the cops are, so nobody wanted to be a cop. I wouldn't want to be a cop if I faced scrutiny every time I got in my cruiser. So that's a problem. And so they're going to have to try to rebuild the community's trust that, hey, we're going to hire more cops and we're going to need you guys to respect that. And yeah, there's bad cops out there, but there's a lot of good cops out there too. And you've got to understand that, things happen, but your mayor needs to not go against law enforcement. Your mayor should be backing law enforcement, like not to the point where, if there's an unjustified shooting, I don't expect them to back that. I expect them to just say, hey, we're going to let the system play out. And, if they find wrongdoing, we'll hold them accountable. So I think that's important to look at. But I think to just say, oh, there's no problem here is a complete intellectual failure on J.B. Pritzker's part and Brandon Johnson. Brandon Johnson has done nothing but fail since he's been in office in Chicago. He's going to be historically the worst mayor Chicago's ever had. So speaking of that, so let's look at their approval ratings. I did a little digging on that. So Pritzker's approval rating is only at 44.1%. His approval rating is lower than Donald Trump's by a pretty decent margin. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson's approval rating is 26%. So for him to speak out and say anything on behalf of Chicago, I would assume that those assumptions are wrong. I don't think he has a clue what Chicago wants. That's my opinion, but that's what I think the statistics show. They're not happy with Brandon Johnson. The Democrat Party as a whole's approval rating is 32.2%. That's bad. And for Brandon Johnson to poll lower than that, that's even worse. At least Pritzker's at 44.1%. That means Mayor Brandon Johnson has a 74% disapproval rating. That's bad. Like he needs to do something for his community instead of get on TV every day and talk about Donald Trump. Same thing with Pritzker. If they want to keep Trump out of there, go fix your crime. Chicago's got shootings every single weekend, multiple major shootings. This isn't just somebody got mad at their wife because they were cheating, so he shot her. It's not those kinds of things. This is like gangland stuff. But you can't get a Democrat to want to do anything about it. So that's that. I don't want to talk too much about Chicago's failure. I have hopes that though. I have a daughter that lives on the north side of Chicago, so I obviously don't want crime to be bad up there. So, let's get it together. Like, can crime be classified as crime? Can we look at these statistics and go, hey, 6 dead people over a weekend is 6 too many? Like, it's really that simple. How do we eliminate people from getting murdered? Probably more cops. Donald Trump's going to come to our city. Well, maybe hire more cops. So let's jump into tariffs because things we've had some court decisions with the U.S. Supreme Court that are affecting things, but not too much. So President Donald Trump said Friday that he will once again put one of his policies in front of the Supreme Court in an effort to keep it intact. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit ruled Friday that Trump went too far when he declared national emergencies to justify imposing sweeping import taxes on almost every country on earth. The ruling largely upheld a May decision by a specialized federal trade court in New York. But the 7-4 appeals court decision tossed out a part of that ruling, striking down the tariffs immediately, allowing his administration time to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. So basically, the federal circuit court said, these tariffs aren't going to work, but we're not going to make you immediately stop them because we know you're going to appeal. So go ahead and appeal. It's going to get appealed up to the Supreme Court, to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court's probably going to uphold Donald Trump's tariffs. They can't really reverse it now. That's the problem. I didn't want the tariffs at first. I'm like, whoa, what are we doing? But I didn't understand what he was doing with them. But now that I've seen it all play out, it was genius. And I want to see that. I don't want to see it get reversed, because I think if you pull that back, now all of a sudden we're paying out billions and billions, well, probably trillions of dollars to other countries that we're not making money off of anymore. So it's going to heavily have a negative effect on our stock market, to the point where it could potentially just completely crash. So I think that's why the circuit court says, hey, we don't agree with you, but we're going to give you time to file your appeal. So just keep them going, because the that circuit court does not want to be responsible for the financial collapse of America, which is what would happen. So in response to that, Trump posted on Truth Social, all tariffs are still in effect. Today, a highly partisan appeals court incorrectly said that our tariffs should be removed, but they know the United States of America will win in the end, which they will. So he said if these tariffs ever went away, it would be total disaster for the country. It would make us financially weak, and we have to be strong. The USA will no longer tolerate enormous trade deficits and unfair tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers imposed by other countries, friend or foe, that undermine our manufacturers, farmers, and everyone else. I agree with that. I think it should be America's position to make sure our economy is stable and strong. If it's just like being if you're a mental health counselor and you're going through a psychiatric issue yourself, how are you going to help somebody else when you can't help yourself? Maybe that's a bad metaphor, but it's true. It's not going to work. It's not going to work the way that they think it's going to work. They got to get it together and let Trump put his tariff plan and codify it. And that's my other issue with this before I move along with more statements is why has Congress not voted this into law? This should already be done, that these tariffs are necessary. There should be some kind of legislation put together that says Donald Trump's tariffs are now law. And they should be adjusted based upon the market demand and market value, and reciprocal, quantities. So I think that Congress needs to do something to help him out on this, and that'll shut up all of these liberal district court judges that don't have a clue. They're just doing the bidding of Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. So Trump also went on to say, if allowed to stand, this decision would literally destroy the United States of America. At the start of this Labor Day weekend, we should all remember that tariffs are the best tool to help our workers and support companies that produce great made in America products. I agree with that. I 100% want to see American manufacturing, American products become the standard. For many years, tariffs were allowed to be used against us by our uncaring and unwise politicians. Now, with the help of the United States Supreme Court, we will use them to the benefit of our nation and make America rich, strong, and powerful again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. The administration believes Trump's imposition of tariffs as a trade strategy is beneficial to the country and has clear legal footing. The majority of the judges on the appeals panel decided differently, setting up a showdown before the Supreme Court, which has supported Trump's use of the presidency to impose his policies on everything from immigration to downsizing the federal workforce. So that's what I'm saying. The circuit court already knows what time it is. This is going to be the Supreme Court's going to overturn the circuit court's decision. Done and over with, facts. Unless some crazy miracle happens. So I think we're in good shape with tariffs. I'm not going to pay that much attention to this district court ruling. It doesn't really matter all that much. So let's go on to FEMA. So I have FEMA issues, and we'll just go into it. So retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General Russell Honoré, he's got like one of those French names. I'm going to butcher them every time. Who commanded Joint Task Force Katrina in the wake of Hurricane Katrina's deadly strike 20 years ago on Saturday, urged President Trump on Newsmax to elevate the Federal Emergency Management Agency to cabinet status and warned Americans to always be ready to evacuate in the face of disaster. He went on to say, "Please, Mr. President, bring FEMA as a cabinet member." Honoré told the America Right Now. Have it work directly for you. We need FEMA. Don't get rid of it. Fix it, Mr. President. Bring it under you. In the article, he wrote that much of the institutional knowledge gained after Katrina has been lost and our best practices for disaster response destroyed, and noted that under Trump, a third of FEMA's workforce has been slashed. Facts, that's true. Honoré also argued in his article that emergency management is a mission in its own, not a part-time function of Homeland Security. Every family must be prepared to evacuate themselves and their neighbors before the storm, not wait for the government to arrive. So when Honoré was on Newsmax, he recalled that during Katrina, he self-deployed from Atlanta to Camp Shelby, Mississippi, before being formally named the commander there. He said, "When I got there and took a look at the coast of Mississippi, I called my boss in Colorado." He said he called me back a couple hours later and told me I would be the commander of Joint Task Force Katrina. And on Wednesday morning at 9:47, I landed at the Superdome. It was a sight to behold to see our fellow citizens outside the Superdome, maybe 15,000 of them standing waiting to be evacuated. Inside, he said, I talked to the mayor, and he said the priority is evacuation. We need your help in getting the evacuation done. I talked to the governor. She said the same thing. He just keeps talking about his valiant efforts in Hurricane Katrina. What I want to say about this is yes, Hurricane Katrina was a national disaster. It was, kind of unavoidable, but I don't think we realized how weak the levees were there. But what I want to say about his plea to President Trump, so I don't have a problem with the disaster and evacuation parts of FEMA. I think they do a good job. Now, do I think that I want FEMA to spearhead this in the current condition it's in with the current leadership and the current, all the scandals that they've had in the last couple of years? Absolutely not. I'd rather take that evacuation money and give it to the Cajun Coast Guard, because they come in here and they don't mess around and they get the job done and they save people and they don't sit around and wait on a pat on the back. So I would rather see the Cajun Coast Guard get that role than FEMA. Now, after that, FEMA does do a good job of the evacuation stuff. They orchestrate things very quickly. I'm okay with that. I like the Cajun Coast Guard better, though, because they don't fuck around. Now, what I don't like about FEMA, and I have personal family experience with this, because in 2001 in my hometown of Van Wert, Ohio, we had a massive tornado come through and it wiped out pretty much the whole north side of my house. My cousin Nick, he was killed in the tornado. And so we had all that happen. And my dad's house, pretty much the house I spent most of my childhood growing up in, it was completely decimated. It took the tornado head on. It took my dad's house, it picked it up, moved it about 10 feet and dumped it upside down, while my dad and my brother were in the crawl space and they were all banged up. It was crazy. They're lucky to be alive. But with that said, when it came time and FEMA showed up, because the governor at the time, which I can't remember who it was, I think it was Strickland, he declared it a national disaster and a national emergency. So all the FEMA showed up. And they didn't do a damn thing for my family. They gave no instructions on what to do, who to talk to, none of that. Nobody knew anything. FEMA showed up and said, and basically, I don't even know if they showed up. I never saw a FEMA truck the whole time. But what I do know is they kept saying they were there. And I think when we look at the tornadoes and the floods that just ripped through Kentucky this past year, we can say the same thing. I've talked to a lot of people that were in those areas that were directly affected by their big tornado and the flood that happened. And they said the same thing. Like, yeah, FEMA was supposed to be here, but we didn't see him. Nobody told us what to do. Nobody told us how we could get FEMA to help us. There was no information. And then when I dug into it, I found out that there were over 800 claims from the insurance companies for FEMA help, but only 400 of those 800 claims were actually helped by FEMA. So they only had a 50% success rate and nobody knew what to do. So that was a big issue. And even Governor Beshear, who's a complete failure, he issued money too, just not too long ago. And then he just got some more money from the Trump administration, like this week, for disaster relief for that region. Nobody knows how to get that. They have no clue. It's like they got the money and then poof, we put out a press release. Hey, look, we got some money from President Trump. Good job, me. And then, but nobody knows how to get that money. There's still people out there in those areas that need help. And the community invested more into helping, just like everything else that happens in this country. The community does more work than the federal government. And then the federal government goes, well, we're here to help. No, you're not. The community's done way more than you. You guys slow the process down and you put red tape around everything. So that's where I have a problem with FEMA. And then, so what these guys do is, so when the FEMA money comes in, like let's say a disaster happens tomorrow. Let's say there's a mudslide in California. Gavin Newsom declares it a natural disaster. Trump says, here's a bunch of federal money to help you. So what they do is, these politicians, so Gavin Newsom will go, okay, I'm going to issue this money to the areas that it needs to go to. So the political leaders of these areas that are going to receive this money, they're going to go create shell accounts that are under these construction businesses and blah, 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 blah. And they're going to divert it right there. And then they're going to issue these bullshit reports back to the state and go, yep, we had this much money spent on the construction of homes and this much money was given to us and we break even. There you go. But then you find out that nobody had their houses rebuilt. You look at what's happening in Hawaii. That process is still going on. Why? Nobody knows. The wildfires in California, there's still problems getting things done. Why? Nobody knows. So this is the FEMA is turned into a giant scam. They want to funnel the money either to themselves or to contractors that'll give them kickbacks. So the federal FEMA money has turned into a scam. And I think a lot of Americans don't realize it until you've actually gone through a disaster. And then you see how much they don't help you. Maybe it's not FEMA's fault. Maybe it's the state, maybe it's the governor's fault. That's who I would blame it on. But at the same time, FEMA needs to do a better job of auditing the funds. And they haven't done, because I think FEMA leadership has been part of this kickback scheme. Or they use the FEMA money to hurry up and revitalize business. Like in Kentucky, what I've seen is they talk about, we got all this FEMA money. You got half of your population that needs it, don't get it. But boy, did we put up 3 new hotels. Like, that doesn't help anybody. Yeah, it might help in the long run, but you got people suffering now that money was allocated for. So there's that problem. And I'm not big on FEMA. I think there's better ways to do the federal disaster. Personally, I feel like that should go through President Trump. I feel like it doesn't matter who the president is. I'd like to see the president personally handle disaster relief fund, simply because of the red tape that's involved through all the other levels that it has to go through and all the scamming that gets done. So that's my thought process on FEMA. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody, but that's where I'm at. Next, my Kentucky investigation. So there was a big city council meeting in London, Kentucky, that basically talked about the impeachment, the ongoing impeachment. They voted to move it to the next level to impeachment, and it passed 5-0, so it was unanimous. And then right before it all went down, right after they adjourned, the mayor got into the microphone and goes, Tell them, go ahead and tell them now. Tell them what you think now. And it started like a whole big giant ruckus. There were people screaming at the city council out in the parking lot. All of Mayor Weddle's goons were out there trying to intimidate everybody and running around getting all violent. And it turned into a big giant ordeal. Obviously, the city police didn't do anything. They just let it happen. They just stood around, nothing to see here. While, the community members are getting screamed at and getting approached aggressively. I would have had a problem with that. I don't like people being in my space. I'm going to swing. Sorry. I'm going to jail. Who cares? Don't get in my space. So the impeachment vote is September 5th. I'm pretty sure that this is going to uphold. There's a lot of community support to impeach him. Really, the mayor's his only supporters really are the ones that he pays to support him. The guy's a billionaire, so he throws his money at people all the time and buys his votes. So this case is starting to get like national exposure. I've seen it like in my news feed, my national news feed. And it's all over the state of Kentucky. Every time they have a city council meeting, it's on the news. But, see, the problem with major news outlets, CNN's not going to cover it because Weddle is a major donor to Andy Beshear. So they're not going to do anything that's going to make Andy Beshear look bad. And the conservative news outlets are not going to cover it because Randall Weddle technically is a registered Republican, even though he does everything for the Democrats, which is pretty par for a politician in Kentucky. They're just a bunch of rhinos. So that's where we're at with that. And I have a feeling the town's going to erupt on the 5th, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, which is next. It'll be this coming Friday. So the cool part about it is they live stream the city council meetings. This has got to be the only town in America that 100,000 people tune in to watch the live streams of city council meetings, because it's straight drama. Weddell's people get stupid. They make signs. They've got like an NGO involved helping fund the anti-impeachment movement. It's a disaster. This dude's an idiot. And one of his family members actually threatened me on my TikTok page, said, "Don't call my family idiots one more time." I'm like, "Or what? Y'all are idiots. You know, guys don't have a clue what, like," and they're a family full of criminals. It's like the sister's been arrested a dozen times, and mom's been arrested. The mayor was arrested for theft. So I wonder where all of the city money's gone. You know, this isn't rocket science. There's a cousin that's in prison. Like, it's a family full of convicts. And but they want to point out everybody else's criminal history, which is ironic. But I can't stand the guy. He can't stand me. At one point, they had my picture in all the police cruisers because I was like their most wanted, hated most person in the whole town. One of the firefighters told me that. He said, "Yeah, we had a whole entire city meeting about you." I was like, "Damn, I'm famous." But then I started this week. I also started looking into this area, Paris, which is right outside of Lexington, little rural community. Well, they've got a lot of corruption going on there. They got a police chief that's running around having affairs on the city money and using unmarked cop cars to go meet up with his mistresses, and then his top brass doesn't even show up to work half the time. You hear the people of the city talk like, "We never see cops in town, but yet we're paying their salaries." So there's a big money scam going on. But that video hit, like, I think we're at like 110,000 views or something now, but it pissed them off. That mayor, I posted that video, and maybe 2 hours later, the mayor had a rebuttal on his website about it. And like, they're trying to get all that to get brushed under the rug, and I brought it back to life. So that made them mad. Which, stop wasting taxpayer money. If you do the right thing, I'm not going to come in your county. Just saying. It's really a simple concept. These guys act like I'm picking on them. Well, you guys are getting caught up in corrupt criminal behavior, and then you get mad when somebody says, "Hey, look over there. You guys are doing something corrupt over there." Like, grow up. Like, you guys don't. You want to go after the guy who's pointing the finger. I get it. I would too. But at the same time, instead of pointing the finger, maybe go clean up your city, go clean up your county, go clean up like all these little good old boy systems. That stuff's not working anymore. So that's kind of where I'm at this week. I've got a couple more missing persons cases I'm going to work on this week, and hopefully bring some new information to these families. I get a lot of good feedback on those. Like, these families appreciate it. A lot of them are cold cases that everybody's forgot about. And I do get a ton of tips on those. It just takes me a while to sort through the tips to find out, because the bad guys, they're going to submit tips. They do it all the time, and they think I'm dumb, but they'll try to send me in a different direction. And I had like 2 people in a row just this week go, "Hey, give me everything you know about this certain situation." And then another guy was like, "Hey, give me everything. What do you got? I'm working on this too." They were trying to find out what I knew, and I didn't give them nothing because they're going to try to get ahead of it. And because I'm kind of unpredictable, I skip around a lot. But as soon as you think I'm not paying attention, but I'm still paying attention. So they don't know what to do. I don't think. I've been told that a lot, that these guys don't know what to do with me. So that makes me happy. I want to keep them on their toes, but all they got to do is just start doing the right thing. If there's money coming in for taxpayers, make sure that money comes in for the taxpayers. If you have corrupt cops, fire the corrupt cops. If you have city councilmen that are skimming, let's get them brought to light and get them voted out. You can get rid of city councilmen too, arrest them, indict them. This isn't a brush under the rug society anymore. You guys got to start getting these things right. One big thing that the state of Kentucky does not do is they do not, every single county that I've gone through 12 counties now. Every single one has a human sex trafficking ring going on. Every single one of them. And the communities all know about it, but nobody does anything about it. Why? Why does the state of Kentucky, you know how many times I've reported them to the state of Kentucky? 12 times. Do you know what the attorney general does? Nothing. Ignores the information. Why? Because they want it to happen. Why? Because there's a bunch of creepy ass dudes in government. So that's where you're at. Like Andy Beshear protects these rings. The Attorney General of Kentucky protects these rings. The KSP protects these rings. And on and on and on. The mayors, the city councils, everybody protects their rings. Somebody's making money or they're using the availability. But I'm not going to be happy until somebody starts going into these counties. That's one thing I don't like about the Trump administration right now is they talk about we're getting all these sex trafficking rings. Congratulations. You're getting some of them, but you're not getting the ones that really matter. The people that in each of these counties that are running these rings, you're not getting them. It's the high echelon people, the people with all the money and all the power are the ones running these rings every single time in every single one of these counties. Somerset, Kentucky has the worst sex trafficking ring I've ever seen. They have more dead bodies in their ground than any place I've ever seen. That is a hub for the worst of the worst. But the state doesn't do anything about it. The FBI doesn't do anything about it. The FBI in Kentucky is completely and utterly worthless. The FBI office for that like southern region is in London, Kentucky. And all of these crimes, all of these federal crimes happen right in front of their face. And they don't do anything about it. Hell, half the people don't even know there's an FBI office in London because they don't ever do anything. But that's neither here nor there. But I'm going to keep you guys posted on stuff. And hopefully everybody, for one, everybody's saying Donald Trump is that he's missing in action. He might be dead, which is not true. But the liberals are running around saying that he's dead. I don't know, because he took a couple of days off. Joe Biden took every single weekend off and went to Rehoboth Beach, and nobody had a problem with that. But Donald Trump goes dark for a couple of days after being on TV every day for the last 150 days, and all of a sudden it's a panic. Get out of here with that. You guys are turds. But I'm out of here. Have a good weekend. Have a good Labor Day tomorrow. I'm going to watch Notre Dame in Miami. Hopefully Miami wins. Sorry, G-Bro. Your Irish are going down. I'm out. Peace.